Hi everybody, welcome to the channel once again. Today let's talk about Mars in Gemini for the year 2026. Mars is the planet of passion, aggressiveness, motivation and frustration. Is also associated with desires, your personality, personal frustrations and personal insecurities. Gemini is mutable air, ruled by Mercury. It's all about communicating, thinking, analyzing, and socializing in light, more surface level, more cold, detached, gullible, and scattered ways. So Mars in Gemini always brings a bit more passion or frustration into areas of communication, thinking, and analyzing in your surroundings or about your surroundings, but also when you are aware of what is being communicated in the world or in the world around you. So, with Mars in Gemini, there can be more passion or more frustration from you, from others, or from the information, the subject itself that is being communicated. Also, Gemini comes from the third house, which is associated with your surroundings and familiar spaces or places like your neighbors, teachers, and co workers. People, places, and things that are in your surroundings but that are not necessarily personal or close to you on a more emotional and spiritual level. They might be close to you physically, you might be with them every day, or like cousins that you know them forever, but you're not really that close to them. So there might be some motivation and aggressiveness in those areas or from those areas into you as well. So with Mars in Gemini can be more passion or aggressiveness in communicating or thinking. So your thoughts can be less clear, they can be more scattered or more gullible if there is some frustration or some passion. So you might become more distracted or you might become more scattered if you are too nervous or too intensely associated, or if you care too much, or if something is really personal when it's about time to communicate and think about it in a more logical and cold way, or it's when it's about time to express it to an audience that you don't feel or that it's just not so personal and so close to your heart or personal awareness. Also, if somebody is communicating something in a more passionate or aggressive way that can trigger you and things and people in the surroundings, or they can make you nervous, or they can make you doubtful or scattered when it's time to receive and process that information in a more logical way. And you can become more gullible if you feel more pressure and more intensity coming from the information or whoever is communicating that information, especially in realms of logical information, facts, scientifical subjects, for an example, or when it comes from big organizations, corporations, or governments. So, wherever the government or an organization, for an example, the World Cup of football is happening right now, so any communication or events that come from that area can trigger a lot of passion or frustration. But in the end of the day, this is also a good alignment for you to express your passion or to express your frustration in a more logical and outreaching broadcasting way. And since Gemini is an air sign and ruled by Mercury, it can bring some cool headness, some calm, and some logical thinking to yours and others' passion, frustration, anger, and motivation. Also, it can be easier to communicate your desires, your personal interests, or your personal insecurities, or you might become, or others around you might become more nervous or more insecure when it's about time to think and communicate your personality, personal interests, and personal insecurities, and specifically your insecurities that deal with more animalistic natures or earlier stages of development memories can perturb you and perturb others and make you and others more scattered or insecure. But it's also a good time to bring some logicality, some thought process into art, creativity, spirituality, and it's also good time to bring some logicality and problem solving skills into traumas, into anger issues, into things that trigger you and make you scared or insecure and you don't really know why or you don't really know where that comes from. Mars in Gemini can help you and others bring logical conclusions and associate triggers and causes with each other to create solutions and conclusions. It can also be easier for certain informations to slip out of your mouth or from others' mouths about personality, desires, anger, and frustration. So maybe you want to keep something a bit more private, or you want to only share something once you developed a bit more interest or logical conclusions about it, but even through your body language or through smaller signs or even just through normal communication, it might be easier for you to or others to jump the gun and release that information. And that might not be a problem, but it might look like a problem because of the scattered and surface level energy of Gemini. You might and because of the intensity and depth of Mars, you might become nervous or feel exposed about sharing some information that is not really revealing or compromising to you or others. But you can also use this energy to do some inquiring to connect the dots about yours and others' passions, motivation, creativity, and spirituality. With little information, you can create the bigger picture. And this alignment also might mean that frustration and aggressiveness might come out of your environment, so things in your environment can easier trigger you into rage or into motivation. Also, your own anger issues and your own motivation can be easily associated and transmitted to your surroundings through communicating and association. And also, this means that the surroundings will be more open or more reactive to yours and others' passion, motivation, creativity, spirituality, personality, and personal interests and personal insecurities. And to end this part of triggers and anger, for an example, smaller things or things on a more surface level, things that are not that deep, can trigger certain reactions within you or in your surroundings that are not usual or that you were not expecting. So smaller events can create bigger waves. And Mars is conjuncting Uranus in Gemini. So this means that change, rebelliousness, opposition, innovation, uniqueness, and individuality are now in the same realm, in the same space as aggressiveness, motivation, passion, and frustration. So it can be easier to communicate, to think, analyze, and socialize subjects, conversations, and topics of change, rebelliousness, and opposition. So you and others, specifically in your surroundings and in the house where you have Gemini in your own chart, can be more passionate or more frustrated or more motivated and more inspired about change, rebelliousness, and opposition. Also, the world might be more open to new ideas that bring innovation or opposition to the old status quo if they are communicated or thought about with more passion, aggressiveness, or uniqueness and individuality. So you and others can be more aggressive or more inspired about change in the world when it comes to places and areas of thought, analyzing, and things that do with society. So rules, regulations, how we think and communicate about status, how we think and communicate about what's right, what's wrong, what's fair, what's smart, what's logical, can be and it is changing right now, and that can make you feel more inspired, more scattered, more insecure, or more frustrated. And by Mars being conjuncting Uranus, it means that these things will now pick up the pace a little bit. So there will be more sparks, there will be more things happening, more things being thought, more things being communicated. And things that are being thought and communicated will have more energy, more intensity, and more pressure behind them. That doesn't mean it will result or amount to something, because Mars, especially on the external side, which is Aries, is more about sparks, initiating, things starting but not really finishing, not really accumulating or materializing. And in the end of the day, this also means that everybody's desires, internal realms, personal interests, personal insecurities, and spiritual belief systems are easier to be communicated and to be analyzed if there is confidence, if there is a routine and pattern already associated with it, and if you're not very experienced in communicating, thinking, analyzing, or socializing more internal parameters, more spiritual and more emotional areas, you and others might be more nervous or might be more distrustful or insecure when it's time to communicate or receive those communications. I took a tarot card for this alignment of Mars in Gemini for the year 2026, and it is the Five of Cups. So this means there is more emotion, more attachment, more personal connection, more purpose, more wisdom, and more knowledge associated to wherever and how, to whatever it's being communicated, and to how that emotion and that internal desire and purpose is being communicated in a broader way, in a more logical, cold, detached, scattered, or gullible way. So it's more personal than usual. This Mars in Gemini alignment, it's more emotional, more spiritual, and it can feel closer to you. Even if it's not, it can be a bit of an illusion, like things are closer to you, closer to your heart, so you can be more reactive, more responsive, or more nervous about communication and information that is being analyzed or communicated in a more logical way, for example, but also you can feel more inspired and motivated by seeing others communicating and analyzing, or for you to personally engage in communication and socialization of personal interests, personal insecurities, and personal testimonies. And now let's see how Mars in Gemini 2026 is aligning with the rest of the natal chart. We have Sun in Cancer, fatal attracting Mars in Gemini, so there are new actions, expressions, and visions that come from new emotions, new feelings, new purposes, new wisdom, and new knowledge that can be associated with your passion or frustration when it comes to communicate in a broader way, in logical and cold ways. We also have Venus in Leo, so there might be more consistency, stubbornness, pride, creativity, and spirituality when it's time to relate or compromise with passion or frustration or spirituality that is being communicated or analyzed in a more logical, scattered, or gullible way. We have Mercury in Cancer in retrograde. So this means that our mind and the way that we think and communicate right now, it's being more associated with new feelings, new emotions, new wisdom, and new knowledge than in its own way it's being brought into spaces for us to analyze how we were doing that in the past. So that is fatal attracting Mars in Gemini, so we can bring those things into passion and motivation that it's being communicated, thought, and analyzed in a more broader, logical, and cold way. Then we have Jupiter in Leo, so that means there can be a more fixed, consistent, or stubborn expansion, wisdom, and knowledge about our uniqueness, individuality, entertainment, and attention, and then we can be more passionate or more frustrated when it comes to communicate or receive communications about the subjects that are being brought to us or broadcasted by us in a more gullible, scattered, and logical way. We have Saturn in Aries sextiling Mars in Gemini, so there is an opportunity to think, communicate, and analyze with more passion, more frustration, and from a more personal standpoint about new systems, new structures, new organizations, limits and boundaries that are derived from new feelings, new visions, and new sensations and perceptions of spirituality, uniqueness, and individuality. Uranus is in Gemini, conjuncting Mars, like we talked about before, so it's easier to communicate and to receive communication, which can trigger more passion or frustration about rebelliousness, opposition, change, and innovation. Also, always remember that Uranus is associated as well with uniqueness and individuality, so it's easier to communicate or be aware of unique and individual things if they carry more passion, motivation, or if they are more related to our personal interests and personal insecurities. Neptune is also in Aries, also in retrograde. So, in general, Neptune in Aries retrograde means that we are being aware of new generational curses or generational powers or generational patterns by being aware of them through new feelings, new visions, new actions, and new expressions. And then we are taking those to take a look at what we have been going through recently. But when it comes to Neptune, recently can be a couple of years ago. But you will be aware of certain patterns, of certain routines, of certain times in your life that are close in nature, in essence, in spiritual altitude to whatever you're going through right now or whatever you are remembering at the moment. So with Mars in Gemini, since Mars rules Aries, it will be easier to think, communicate, and analyze, and to see reflected in the real world those patterns if they are associated with your passion, frustration, personality, personal interests, or personal insecurities. And lastly, but not least, we have Pluto in Aquarius, also in retrograde. So Pluto in Aquarius in itself is the whole transformation process of the world into a world where individuality, uniqueness, humanitarian patterns and systems are becoming more present, more free, more communal, more transparent, and more accessible to everybody else in a fair way. So with Mars in Gemini, trining Pluto in Aquarius means there is a gift for communication and thought to be associated with that transformation process if there is more passion, more motivation, more aggressiveness, or more frustration in those areas. And with Pluto being retrograde, it means that now we're taking a look at how we and the world have been transforming, how those things were happening, how are we forced to change, what power and control situations we were forced to go through in order to be a part or to be against that transformation process. So we can also bring some update energy, we can bring some lightening up energy, or we can just bring more insecurity, doubt, or just association energy to those areas of our life. So it's a cool gift if you want to bring change to the world, if you want to see the world become something new, and if you're open to new possibilities, but it can make you nervous and it can block your creativity, your passion, and your communicating skills if you're still not aware in which direction the world is transforming to and in which areas of your life and your surroundings you need to take power and control over without stepping on others and without becoming narcissistic or without transforming your heart into a cold heart. So in the end of the day, this Mars in Gemini alignment, together with Uranus in Gemini as well, can help us see, be a part, be motivated, or be frustrated about this new transformation process of Pluto that is transforming the world into a more communal, more unique, communicative, and logical place while maintaining some transparency and humanitarian patterns. And that's everything for today. Thank you very much for watching. Remember that you can get readings with me using the links down below and contacting me through the email down below. And I wish that Mars in Gemini brings more passion, motivation, inspiration, and creativity to how you and others communicate and analyze about your personality, your personal interests, and your personal insecurities. I wish you the best thoughts, ideas, feelings, and emotions, and a whole bunch of individuality, creativity, and responsibility as well. Keep it cool, keep it healthy.